Hello and welcome to the Days of Yore. Today we'll be speaking about the Northumberland deal, the political scandal that rocked the election in New Brunswick in 1890, involving 4 members from Northumberland County and their crossing the floor to join the government of Andrew Blair. So we'll begin, as I always do, by saying that I'm not really an expert here. My sources today are mostly from the local newspapers, and really I'm here to present all of this for narrative purposes. Of course, if you're enjoying these videos, I would ask you to give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to this channel, and if you're able, do please have a look at the link to our Patreon page located in the description below. All right, let's begin. So, for a little bit of background, we'll talk about the 2 leaders going into this provincial election in 1890, and then talk about the 4 opposition candidates here in Northumberland County. So Andrew Blair had been the Premier of New Brunswick since 1883. He was a successful Fredericton lawyer and who had grown up within a few blocks of the legislature, so it seemed that politics had always been in his future. He was known as something of a small R radical, somebody that didn't have a lot of time for tradition and really, wanted to kind of move New Brunswick forward as he saw it. And by a vote of non-confidence, he was able in 1883 to upset the government of Daniel Hannington and become Premier himself. So, the man that he upset, the man who was leading the opposition, Daniel Hannington, was himself a lawyer as well. He was known really for his eloquence in the legislature and his very outspoken opposition to the policies of Andrew Blair. He was much more of a traditionalist. Unfortunately, his long-standing and really unwavering opposition to Blair's policies did sort of blunt the effect in the House, where it was just sort of understood that he was going to oppose, and so his opposition lacked the same kind of punch as it may have done had it been a little bit more strategic. At least that's what modern political commentators have to say. So, Blair had done well for himself, but in the last number of years leading up to this election, it seemed he had stumbled. He had alienated a lot of the province through his policies with regard to Crown land, and had lost the support of a lot of influential groups in the province, and had seen defections from his own party. This was somewhat ironic because Blair had built his party by coaxing defections from outside and bringing new members in. But now the wheel had turned and he was facing a lot of defections from within. So just a note, I guess, at this point, today we would understand Blair as the leader of the Liberal Party and Hannington as the leader of the Conservative Party. But at that time, those distinctions did not formally exist as we understand them today. So again, if that helps you to understand where this comes from, I'll make that distinction. But again, please know that a formal Liberal and a formal Conservative Party don't really exist at this time. Anyway, so there is mounting opposition to Blair, and the 4 opposition candidates here in Northumberland County very well represent that kind of opposition. We see John Percival Burchell, who is leading the opposition ticket, it seems. He is a defector from Blair's government. He had sat in Blair's government, he had supported Andrew Blair for a number of years, but now feels that he cannot do so. As the scion of a lumbering family himself, he feels that Blair's policies toward Crown land and mean that they can't agree. And he's joined on the ticket by James Robinson and John O'Brien. Both men heavily involved in the lumber industry themselves. Robinson along the southwest in the Derby area, in the parish of Derby, and O'Brien here in Nelson. So again, two gentlemen that are actually partners. They built the O'Brien Bridge connecting Derby Junction to Nelson, and they were in the process of, I guess they had just completed that in 1887. So again, two men that know a little bit about the lumber industry and again are opposing the policies of Blair. Lemuel Tweedy rounds out the opposition ticket, a well-known lawyer from Chatham who is known for being a very open and affable individual, but somebody that's also willing to capitalize on an opportunity, and that becomes a little more important later on. The campaign definitely focuses on Blair's policies as regards to Crown land, and sees most of the speakers driving home that point. Burchell says that his own operations, the operations of his family, the Burchell family, have been greatly affected by this government's policies. O'Brien says, "I'm not much for making speeches. I'm a worker. If you send me to Fredericton, that's what I'm going to do." And it's a very successful call. This is helped a lot by the fact that there is a feeling that Andrew Blair is calling this election very early in the year of 1890 in order to make sure that his opponents in the lumber industry will be up in the camps, that a lot of the voters, a lot of the lumbermen themselves won't be able to vote because they'll be hard at work. So whether or not that's true or not, it is a perception that's put forward and probably contributes to the fact that the opposition ticket is successful here in Northumberland County, and all 4 seats go to these 4 men that I've just been speaking about. And the opposition party does very well and is in a position to form a government. So it looks as if Daniel Hannington is about to become Premier of New Brunswick for a second time, and kind of overthrow Andrew Blair. But Andrew Blair still has a trick or two up his sleeve. He comes to Northumberland County and he makes what is known as the Northumberland Deal. Now, in exchange for a reduction in the stumpage rates and the appointment of Lemuel Tweedy as the Surveyor General for the province of New Brunswick, Tweedy leads his 3 colleagues in crossing the floor and joining Andrew Blair's government, making sure that Andrew Blair can remain as the Premier of the province. So to say this was controversial is an understatement. Most of the newspapers are very quick in condemning this action. And there is a feeling, and certainly there's an argument in that favor, that the people of Northumberland County didn't vote for government candidates. They voted for opposition candidates. They were opposed to Andrew Blair and his government. And now for their members to basically, turn on that will, to disregard that vote by joining Andrew Blair was seen as, questionable to say the least, if not reprehensible in its own way. However, the 4 gentlemen chose to play, I guess what you would call the long game. They figured that the public's memory, may not be all that long, that they figured that they could do more from within the government than without. J.P. Burchell became the Speaker of the House, who's Speaker of the Legislature not long afterward. Both Robinson and O'Brien were returned in subsequent elections. And so there was a feeling that by about 1892, that the 4 men had been vindicated. As I say, Burchell would continue and do 2 sessions as Speaker of the Legislature. O'Brien would remain as a lumber magnate in the area until his death in 1917. Robinson would move from the legislature to the House of Commons, where he would remain as the MP for a number of years. And Tweedy himself, by 1902, becomes Premier of New Brunswick. So all in all, quite a bit of success. So in the end, the Northumberland deal had a very explosive beginning, but its aftershocks were not sufficient to end the careers of the four men involved. And so I think we'll leave it there for today. The Northumberland deal, an interesting episode in Miramichi's history and also in the history of the province. Now, again, I'll reiterate, if you're enjoying these videos, please do consider giving them a like, subscribing to this channel, and if you're able, do please consider looking at our Patreon page in the description below and signing up to support us on a monthly basis. All of the perks are all listed there, and opportunities for exclusive content are available as well. So next week, my colleague Ken Walker will be back with The Living Island. I will see you in 2 weeks' time with more stories from Nelson and Beaubears Island. Thank you so much for your time, and for the Days of Yore, I've been Dr. Sean McCarthy. Thanks so much.